Worked for a leader who was less than perfect. That's the euphemism for some other things I could say about the leader. Maybe jerk would be one of them. I am totally driven by my desire to help make all, as you say in Texas, or as I say in Texas, all of y'all's work life better. So that's your life at work. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it's really difficult to deal with the people that you work with. And my goal is to make everybody's life better because so many of my friends have suffered at the hands of really terrible leaders. And sometimes they didn't mean to be terrible. They just didn't have the skills and the practice to become great leaders. I've been interviewing a lot of leaders lately in preparation for a book that I'm writing about their greatest challenges. And the thing that's coming out highest in their mind about their greatest challenges is the challenge for today's leaders to lead the young people. I think it's Generation Z that have completely different priorities. And that's what they say is their greatest challenge. We can fix that. And I'm going to tell you how. So let's get started. Let's see if this works. Not working. All right, I got a button here. 65% of employees today, and that's not the Gen Zs, that's 65% of all of them, are not engaged, and of those, 20% are actively disengaged. I worked at a company many years ago where sometimes some of the people would just not go to work. They knew they weren't going to get fired, and they just didn't bother to show up because they didn't really like what they were doing. Now that's different from work from home. They just weren't working. Only 20% of today's workers are actively engaged. 20%. Think about how much more we could get done if we had 50%, 60%. That would be great. Okay, so we don't have that. We have just a few. So the leaders' goals are to hire and retain a productive workforce. That's what they want. They want to hire and retain a productive workforce. Yeah, everybody wants that. When I was leading teams, I would look to hire people that I thought would be very productive and would want to keep working on my team or my company's projects, whether it was mine or not. I didn't care. So I'm going to talk about several behaviors that leaders can make, and you can engage in these behaviors as well to make you a better leader. Maybe you're leading your team, maybe you're not, but your manager could be improved as a leader, and you can pass these along. And at the end of the talk, I'm going to give you a QR code to take a picture of. You fill out a quick survey, it takes 90 seconds at the most, and I will give you all of today's slides, so you don't have to take notes because you can get it for free. So the first behavior is to be adaptable. As Heraclitus, an old Greek philosopher, said, all is flux. And I think all he left was a stone tablet with a delta on it. And delta means change. And so it was interpreted to be all is flux from Heraclitus. You can't step into the same river twice because you step in and you step out and it's already changed when you step in again. So you have to be able to pivot when change happens, when scope changes happen, when projects get canceled, when things about the project that you're working on change, you get new employees or employees leave, that's a change that you have to deal with. But good leaders also learn how to facilitate the change, to take their people through the cycle of sort of a loss of productivity and then regaining that productivity. How many of you have had to deal with change in your jobs? Everybody, yeah. It happens. Change happens. Okay, so what are these cycles that people have to go through? It's very much the cycles of grief. You hear about this change, something's going to be different, your product is canceled, your boss has decided to bring in a bunch of consultants to do your work, and you're like, oh my God, what's happening? You know, now I'm not going to be doing this. And at first, you're sort of in shock and denial, and you're thinking, this can't be happening, this is a bad idea, I don't like this. And then your productivity goes, you go down, down, down as you're just angry about it. You think it was the wrong choice to have made, and then maybe you try to bargain with your boss. Maybe we should do it this way, and we can salvage that. We don't have to just cancel that product. And then as an individual, you go through a period of depression. And here's where the talent of a good leader is, to get through that period of depression as fast as possible. I had one employee who, when he found out that his project was canceled, he got into that depression and he stayed and stayed and stayed and stayed and stayed down there, unproductive, angry, just so unhappy about the whole thing. And finally, you get to a stage of acceptance, and then your productivity goes up. Well, what is it that lets you get to that stage of acceptance? It's the recognition of new opportunities now after the change has happened. So you go down, you can go whoop right back up, or you can go and then finally go up. When you see that there's something that is going to be good for you, you see that, and so that's when you come up. Now, as a young programmer, I would see this happening over and over again, and finally I figured out, okay, this is just the way things are. Changes are going to happen. Somebody's going to introduce a new version of their product, and we're going to have to switch, because ours is built on top of it. We're going to have to switch to their new version. That's just going to trash all our old versions, and we just need to get with the program. And I learned to get through that change cycle in one day, because I figured out what was going on and what I had to do to get through it. So that's about facilitating change. If you can show your team what to expect and what is in it for them at the future, you can get the team through the change pretty quickly. All right, a second behavior that you can have is to motivate and inspire your team rather than threatening. And Marcus Buckingham famously said, "People leave managers, not companies." Have any of you seen that happen? Have any of you done that? Yeah, it happens. We all do it. I would always have a list of other companies that I might go to if this one suddenly became toxic or whatever. So let me tell you about Pete. Pete is a guy I worked with many years ago, and he was one of the worst managers I've ever seen in my life. I fortunately didn't work for him. He was leading another team. And he would say things to his team in meetings, in public, either you or your replacement is going to have this done by next Friday. What a jerk thing to say. Come on, you don't need to be threatening to motivate people. You need to learn how to inspire them. So I hope none of you ever had to work for Pete. It was not easy. So how do you motivate people? Well, you explain what the big picture is, what the product is that we're all working on. And then of that product, what's our role in making that? What are we doing to contribute to the success of this product? Now, you're all working on projects of some sort or another. And if you can see the big picture of how this product is going to benefit customers, how this product is going to make work easier for customers, well, then you see the big picture, you see the goal, and you can figure out how you play in that goal. Early in my career, we shipped products not online because that didn't exist yet, but we shipped them in boxes. And one of the nicest things was to see the UPS man come in with his big trolley and dolly and fill it up with boxes and then take them out to his truck. We knew those products had been sold, and he'd have a big stack of them. And that's being able to see the big picture, to see the goal and say, oh man, we contributed to that. We know what our part of that was. Our part wasn't writing the documentation. Our part wasn't writing the installation instructions. Our part was writing the code that made the product work. And that's a wonderful thing to inspire people to want to do that more. So see what cog in what wheel you are in a big product. That's how you can inspire people. I had another boss once who, Bill, he had a way of inspiring people by telling them, we're going to build this great thing and it's going to help people to do this and that and the other thing. And he would go on about how great it was, and then he would be like, we're building a rocket to the moon. And by the time he wound up with that, people were sort of crying and begging, I want to be on the rocket. But he was a little overboard. Not that I didn't learn from him, but that was a little overboard for me because I wasn't selling rocket ships. So another behavior for good leaders is to focus on results, not presence. And that comes down to being able to trust your team. If you're focused on results and not presence, you have to wonder, okay, can I trust this person to get their job done? Can I trust that this person can do this project? You have to trust that, well, you don't see them, but you have to trust that they're going to get the work done. And another part of that, focusing on the results, is working smarter, not harder. And I advocate for people taking 90-minute, or maybe it can be a little more or less, depending on the nature of the task at hand, but a 90-minute focused work session. And what I mean by that is, say it's 9 o'clock, and you have a project or you have a piece of a project that you think is going to take you about 45 minutes. So you say, okay, I'm going to get this done in 45 minutes. Now I'm just going to have a 45-minute focused work session. So I tell myself, okay, I'm putting away my phone. I'm not looking at any email. I'm not looking at any instant messages. I'm not looking at any of that. And I'm just going to focus on this piece of work that I have to do. And I've got a deadline, 9:45. That's what time it should be taking me. And at that time, then you have a little break or a little reward. So maybe I say, okay, I work from home. So maybe I say, all right, at 9:45, I'm going to have a cup of tea and a cookie, and then I'm going to wash some of the dishes or start the laundry or something where it just drains your head. just gets it cleared out. Just give yourself a little time or a little something. I'm going to walk around the block. I'm going to play with my dog, whatever it is, just something different. But you have to tell yourself at the beginning, I'm allotting 45 minutes or 90 minutes or an hour or whatever it is. I'm allotting X amount of time, and I'm going to get this done, and I'm just not going to pay any attention to any interruptions. That's hard if you're in a big building and everybody's at their workstation and they come up to you, they see you, they say, "Oh, Joe, can you help me with this problem?" You're a nice person. So you say, "Oh, sure," and your brain is altered. You have popped all the work that you've been engaged in off the stack, and now you help Joe, and then you come back and you have to pop all that back on the stack and learn and get back to where you were. That interruption takes you a lot more time. It has a lot more overhead than just the 5 minutes it took you to help Joe. Or, yeah, it was Joe that came up. So focusing on the results and the product of your work, more than focusing on your presence, can be very helpful. And that is one reason why people can get more done working from home, because they're not interrupted by a lot of things. "Oh, I got this bug. Can you fix this for me? Can you join our meeting? Maybe you just want to take off and go down an email path," whatever. But, like I said, the leader has to trust that you're going to get that work done. So let's talk about trust. The number one challenge for remote workplaces is that that's what we're talking about for the workforce, for the workplace of the future. We're talking about some remote, some hybrid, some in the office. But for the remote and hybrid, the number one challenge is building trust. And when we can build trust, it can boost productivity by up to 50%. It can improve retention by up to 65%, and the speed of decision making by up to 35%. All those are huge productivity gains. So how can we get there? How do we get that trust? How do we do that? And I'm going to talk about that in a second. I just want to say that when you feel trusted to do your job as you should be trusted, because you're not doing junk work, you're not sitting at your desk making it look like you're working, but really you're shopping or playing a game. No, you're working. And people should trust you to be able to get that work done. Doing so is a huge boost to the company, the organization. So let's talk about the economics of trust. When trust goes up, speed goes up, and costs go down. And when trust goes down, speed goes down, and costs go up. So consider after 9/11, and consider what changed at the airports. All of a sudden, we didn't trust that the other passengers on the plane, or even the crew, could be trusted. We had to not trust anybody because we were afraid that they might be going to take this plane down or crash it or blow it up or whatever. And so we had to start inspecting people to see if they were carrying knives or bombs or whatever. And then we had the shoe bomber, so we had to all take our shoes off at the security check-in. And then we had the underwear bomber. I'm always wondering, what does that say? They never got down to that, but they do X-ray us. Do we fly naked now because somebody might be carrying something dangerous in their underwear? I don't know. Anyway, just a little laugh for you. But how much did the cost of flying go up? It went up for everyone in terms of time. Instead of being able to arrive at the gate 10 minutes before your flight left, you had to arrive now in Austin, where I live, you have to arrive 2 hours early just to get through security and to your gate a half hour before it's going to depart. That's a long time. That's a big cost to you. It's also a big cost to the airlines and the government for having all these TSA inspectors there. I look at it sometimes as a job function. You know, how did we build this many jobs? And these are all security jobs. And the sad thing to me is they don't promote or produce any product. There's nothing that improves the GDP. There's nothing in there that improves the life and welfare of the country. It's just time spent to be safe. That's a huge cost, huge. And that's all about trust. No trust, huge costs. And here's a problem. People want choices. You know, when I go to get my hair cut, I want a choice about what the hair is going to look like. I don't say to the person who's cutting my hair, oh, whatever you feel like, you know, give me a mohawk maybe. I don't trust them to just make a choice. I'll give them a picture. Oh, here's what I used to look like in 1965. Make it look like that. But people want control, but so do leaders. Leaders want control, and they have leadership development programs. I teach some myself, but it's never about control. Its leadership development programs are often titled things like meeting management, performance management, project management, risk management, this and that management. Well, what's common in all those titles? They don't contain the word leadership, they contain the word management. And management is controlling. Leadership is inspiring. But they're all, those programs are all about control. How can we have faster meetings? Well, we have this method and this method and this method. We're going to have faster meetings to get stuff done. So, leaders want control. And this is so last century, and that's Jack Welch's style, but it doesn't work for this century. It no longer works. So let's see what Steve Jobs had to say. Management is about persuading people to do things they do not want to do. So suppose I'm going to give you $100 if you come to work and do some work for an hour. That's controlling you, okay? You don't want to come to work. You don't want to do anything on this project. It's boring. But if I give you $100, you'll come in and, you know, code for a little while. But leadership is about inspiring people to do things that they never thought they could. Jack Kennedy gave the most inspiring speech telling people that they're going to send a man to the moon and bring him back safely. And then there's the line, ask not what you can do, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And it was an inspiring message telling people, yeah, we can do these things. Get involved, get engaged, and you can help us do them. It's getting late here. Well, trust requires ethical behavior. And we have to face some ethical challenges. Now, one of the main challenges I see in every aspect, it's not just tech, it's lots of other things. It involves shortcuts, and that the shortcuts are serve some sort of financial benefit. So I'm going to build this with fewer screws and fewer metal phalanges or whatever, and it's going to save me some money. And sometimes the challenges are about political considerations. If I do this, people are going to like me, and if I do that, they're not going to like me. But the shortcuts are often what lead to disasters. And I could go on about that for an hour, but I'm going to try to roll through this quickly. I'm going to talk about the foundations of ethics. I'm going to try to get this to the 1-minute version of the history of ethics from a philosopher. My first 2 degrees were in philosophy, and then I went on to computer science. Believe me, philosophy, logic, just like computer science. So ethics is about making choices, and it involves making choices that will lead to better trust and less likelihood of disaster. This is a little tree of the continuation of how philosophers started out and then how they went on this ethical discussion from Aristotle to Kant to Bentham and Mill. And Aristotle, about 350 BC, wanted to talk about virtue, character, practical wisdom, and he was concerned about how people could lead a good life. What was that? So I break it down to a question: can you sleep at night? That's the quickie question. Immanuel Kant in the 18th century was concerned about duties and rights, and he had something called categorical imperative. And for him, it was all about, well, if it should be this way, it should be this way for all. So that's categorical for all, and imperative should be. So the question to ask in Kant's ethics is, what if everybody did this? That's a real easy question to cue you up for an ethical decision. And then we have Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, and they came up with utilitarianism. What's the greatest good for the greatest number? So interesting Bentham side note, he didn't want to miss any good philosophical discussion, so in his will he instructed that his body be stuffed and put into a box, kind of like a telephone box, and he could be wheeled out for discussion. So there's a picture of him in his box. His real head is on the floor. It's a wax model of his head on top, but his real head had deteriorated and kept falling off, so they just put it on the floor. Anyway, I put this up here so that you'll remember Jeremy Bentham, because he was an odd guy, but he loved a good discussion. So here's the 3 quick questions to ask yourself when you're faced with an ethical dilemma. Can I sleep at night? What if everybody did this? And what's the greatest good for the greatest number? Those are the questions you can ask yourself. They're easy questions. There's just 3 of them. So part of being trusted is being ethical. I had a colleague, let's call him David and the Amazing Schedule. David was a very talented software developer. He had built a product and built a company. He was an entrepreneur. And now he got bought by a bigger company, and now they wanted the next version of his product to come out, and they wanted to time it with some versions of their big company product. Well, David decided, well, if I can do this by this time, my employees should be able to too. No thought for the overhead of communication in a group rather than one person's head to do it all. He had done it all himself. And he came out with a really aggressive schedule. Have any of you ever faced a really aggressive schedule? Yeah, we all have. Well, his team missed the first date that he had set. Then he set another one. They missed that, and then he set another one. And I think they made it on the 3rd date, but it was like a year late. Meanwhile, his employees didn't trust him, and the executives at the parent company didn't trust him because he was supposed to deliver part of something that would get wheeled out the door with their major big product, and it didn't, and so that disrupted the product marketing. So I'm going to talk about what you can do continued discussion of the things that leaders can do. So here's one thing you can do to be an engaged leader. Be present. That's like the first thing that improv comedians will tell you. You have to be present. You have to be focused on what's happening here and now. Don't look at your devices. Listen to what the other person is saying and be respectful. One of my friends worked for a guy who, when they had their weekly meetings, he would be sitting behind his workstation and replying to email and rarely looking at her. So she finally said, I need to get your attention, so let's go meet in the conference room. Well, that didn't do much good because he could still look at his phone. So he just wasn't present. He's not a good leader. So how can you communicate effectively? I've worked with a lot of people who will want to communicate that they think there's a problem. And so Chicken Little is going, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And then one of my favorite cartoonists, Roz Chast from the New Yorker, says, here's the other way, injured? I told you so. You didn't listen. Call 1-800-BOO-HOO. So, those are two really ineffective ways of communicating. And Chicken Little's way of being ineffective is that he says the same thing over and over, and so you don't believe him anymore. And so when the sky really is falling, you don't believe him. Now, communicating, another part of being an engaged leader, is everyone's job. Here's the trick. Know what your audience cares about. What do they care about? And then you put the communication in their terms. So let's consider the engineer who was responsible for the O-rings on the Challenger, and he needed to communicate to his boss. What did his boss care about? His boss was working for Morton Thiokol and cared about keeping his customer, NASA, happy. NASA had delayed the Challenger flight, delayed it 2 or 3 times. It had the teacher in space. We had televisions all around in classrooms so that everybody could watch the teacher take off and go into space. NASA wanted this launch to take place. The problem was it was 28 degrees the night before the launch, and they had never launched or tested the equipment in anything below 54 degrees. And the guy who was in charge of the O-ring said, I don't think this is going to work. I think we should not allow them to launch. But there was a conversation in the evening before. They came to an impasse where Morton Thiokol said, no, don't launch. NASA said, yes, we have to launch. We've been postponing this. We got to go. They came to an impasse. They took a break. And then they came back. And the Morton Thiokol engineers said, well, we don't know that this low temperature is going to be a problem. So you can go ahead and launch. They were trying to keep their customer, NASA, happy. Well, the engineer might have said, or the Morton Thiokol person might have said, I know we all want to help this launch proceed smoothly. That's thinking about what the other person cares about. We all want the Challenger to launch and return to Earth safely. That's what they all care about. And then he can say, in order for us to feel confident that this can happen, we need to wait until the temperature is warmer. So it's putting the beginning of the conversation in terms of what the customer cares about, launching and coming back. Then saying, we want that too, but we need to wait until it's a little warmer. That's a more effective way of communicating than whatever they did, because they did launch and it crashed. So here's the things that engaged leaders do. And I've already talked about each of them, but this is just a list. Be adaptive, facilitate change. Motivate and inspire. Don't be like my friend Pete, who would say, either you or your replacement will have this done by Friday. What a jerk. Focus on results, not presence. And in order to do that, you have to have trust, and you're empowering your team. If you're just focused on the results and your team is figuring out the schedule, figuring out the parts, figuring out, okay, we're going to do this part first, and then we're going to do the user interface, and then we're going to do this. You're empowering the team to figure that all out. You're not telling them. Be present when you communicate with people. Look at them, listen to them, take their ideas, thank them for their ideas, and then communicate effectively. No sky is falling stuff. The outcomes: trusting cultures, empowered teams, retention, recruitment, productivity. Now, I told you that I would give you a copy of the slides if you want them, and so just scan that QR code. It's a quick evaluation of my performance, and if you've learned anything here, I would really appreciate your letting me know. So scan the QR codes, or just go to https://talk.ac/Leslie Martinich and type in the code DevOps in caps. Now, while you're doing that, I'm going to show you, for those of you who wish to participate in that, I'm going to show you something that makes me a little different. My brain is a little different from probably most people in this room, no two alike, and I can write upside down and backwards. I can write upside down, I can write upside down and backwards, I can write upside down and forwards, and I can write forwards and right side up. Not only that, I can do it on an Etch-a-Sketch, which you might not know. I forgot to bring my Etch-a-Sketch to show you. So if any of you want to come up to the front, tell me your name, I will write that while the rest of you are filling out this quick form. Anybody want to see my amazing skills? Okay, you're laughing here. What's your name? Thank you. I'm going to go with, oh, geez. Benjamin. Thank you, Benjamin. I'm going to see if I could write your name upside down and backward. Just let me start with one, see how I do. Benjamin's kind of hard. J's always throw me. Let's see. So if I were to write Benjamin forward and not normal, it would be Benjamin. So let's do it upside down and backwards. BENJAMIN. That's upside down and backwards. His last name is so hard I couldn't even be. First of all, I can't pronounce it. Cirkovic. Okay, not spelling that one out. Thank you, Benjamin. That was a good. You guys had a.
Now you know why we were laughing.
Now I know why you were going to trick me. You probably can't see it from here without a good light on it, but believe me, it is right. Any other takers? Oleg Lisiak?
Yep.
Oleg Lisiak wants me to write his name upside down and backwards. So we'll do it forwards first. O-L-E-G. So backwards it's O-L-E-G. Pretty easy. Here's mine, Leslie. I've done it before, so it's real easy. Okay. Any of you know what an Etch-a-Sketch is? It's an old toy where you had two dials, and one dial would move your line to the left and right, and one dial would move it up and down. And I can write upside down and backwards on an Etch-a-Sketch where I just have two knobs. So that is the one that impresses people a lot more. Okay, I assume you've finished your little reviews. So now I will wrap it up with a quick few things for you to do, the action item for you to do. So here's your action. Become a trusted, engaged leader. Whether you are the team lead or not the team lead, behave in an ethical manner. Learn to be engaged with other people by being present, respectful, and listening to them. Enlist your team. And what that means is, say I have a big problem to solve and I hired all these smart people to work with me. Well, I hired smart people. I can benefit from getting them to help me. So I enlist them to help me. They feel more trusted and valued then. And help your team become an empowered team. They're empowered when you trust them to help you and do things. And that takes practice. But imagine what it's like for the team that you work with. I feel heard. I feel seen. And I feel like my ideas and my work make a difference. How would that be if every team felt like that? That's what I want, and that's why I do what I do. So if you have questions, there's my LinkedIn, my email, and my phone number. So thank you so much for your time and your presence. Thanks.